Welcome to Outside Views, and I think we've finally reached the point where the national debate on Brexit has moved from speculation and denial to hard, undeniable economic reality. The argument that leaving the European Union would unleash some kind of global Britain and being an economic superpower now rings hollow, replaced by the dreary, persistent headache of weak productivity. What we are seeing now is the City of London, the actual money machine, and the government's own forecasters, the Office for Budget Responsibility, confirming what many of us feared all along. The blunt fact is that the UK's productivity puzzle, the core problem of poor output for each hour of work, has a massive, undeniable Brexit-shaped piece missing from it. And this isn't just a dry academic argument. It is what dictates wages and living standards and the government's ability to fund public services. And right now, that machine is clearly misfiring, costing the public finances tens of billions of pounds. When Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, publicly blames the 2016 Leave vote for Britain's recent growth weakness, you know the political ground has shifted, because for years, mainstream politicians, they tried desperately to avoid uttering the B word. But the numbers are now too big and the impact too profound to ignore it any longer. And the first and most compelling piece of evidence for this disaster comes directly from the heart of the finance sector, the City of London. We have testimony from people who were right there making operational decisions when the earthquake hit. Rob Rooney, the former top executive for Morgan Stanley in London, provides a devastatingly clear perspective. He said that the impact of Brexit is unmistakable. Frankfurt, Madrid, Milan and Paris are all doing better than they were. It has been at London's expense, and there is no question about that. And this is not hyperbole from an activist. This is a direct observation from a major player who oversaw the forced restructuring of one of the world's most powerful investment banks. Rooney personally led Morgan Stanley's relocation of hundreds of bankers and billions of pounds of assets to Frankfurt, simply to sidestep the catastrophic loss of the passporting rights that gave them easy access to the EU market. And this was a move entirely dictated by the political decision to leave the single market. And his experience is just one example of a massive trend. More than 440 other companies have followed suit, moving almost £1 trillion in assets between them. And let me say that again. Nearly 10% of the entire UK banking system's assets were relocated out of the UK. And this is a colossal self-inflicted wound. The sheer volume of this shift proves that promised financial sector dividend of Brexit was a fantasy, a promise built on sand. Instead, we are seeing the opposite, a costly destabilizing fragmentation of the city's power. Rooney's friends and family moved to Barcelona, Madrid and Paris, and these cities are now booming, while London's ability to drive its productivity higher has, relative to its peers, collapsed. The City of London, which was once the engine that drove UK productivity growth to the second highest rate in the G7 before the 2008 crash, is now one of the biggest sectors actively dragging down the UK's overall performance. Its financial and insurance output has grown just a pathetic 2.8% since the referendum, much slower than the already anemic 10% growth of the wider economy in that time. William Wright, a respected figure in the city's think tank community, sums up the sad reality perfectly. I think it's said in English. Walking through the gleaming towers, you might think now, wow, this looks great, and who said Brexit was going to be bad? But the truth is, Wright says, arguably, it would have been even better without Brexit. The decline is subtle, relative and structural, but it is a decline nonetheless. The UK's share of global exports has slumped from 21% in 2010 to just 15% now, and the financial services sector, which should have been leading the change for global Britain, has seen its market share fall in major EU economies like the Netherlands, Ireland, and Spain and Italy. The UK is losing its competitive edge. It is a profound and irreversible damage. And now let's also look at the national picture. And this is where the £20 billion cost comes in, because the government's own official forecaster has been forced to confront the disaster. For years, the OBR was overly optimistic, predicting that annual productivity growth would eventually bounce back closer to its pre-crash average of 2.2%. But the reality is that productivity is now actually falling, and since 2019, it has only grown by a meager 1.5%, a figure heavily impacted by the economic dislocation of the pandemic. The OBR is now expected to cut its trend productivity growth forecast down to a truly worrying 0.9%. And this tiny number, the small adjustment in a spreadsheet, has an enormous price tag. It is expected to add roughly £21 billion to government borrowing by the end of the decade. And this is the hidden tax that Brexit has imposed on British public finances. A colossal deficit that Chancellor Reeves now has to fill with potential tax hikes or painful spending cuts. The reality is that productivity is notoriously tricky to forecast, but what economists are now increasingly saying is that Brexit has played a significant exacerbating role in the post-2008 slump. The political turmoil that followed the vote put major businesses' investments on ice for years, a self-imposed period of paralyzing uncertainty that choked off growth. And the erection of tough new trade barriers with the UK's largest trading partner is the ultimate anchor on long-term output. Experts have long predicted that this trade disruption would cut Britain's long-term productivity by about 4% relative to a scenario where the UK had remained a member of the EU, and the OBR is expected to update that devastating estimate soon. Since the end of the EU transition period, the official one, there are still some detailed transition periods running at the moment, especially in the financial sector, the trade statistics tell a brutal, simple story. UK exports have fallen significantly behind the G7 average, with crucial sectors like cars, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, and food all slumping in relative terms. Leaving the EU was supposed to give the UK the freedom to cut business red tape and secure new fantastic trade deals that would turbocharge the economy. Instead, they got trade barriers with the biggest, closest market on the planet and a trade performance that has left the UK trailing its peers, losing market share to countries like the Netherlands, Ireland, Spain, and Italy. And the most galling thing about this productivity disaster is that the City of London was supposed to be the jewel, the sector that would remain immune and would thrive on deregulation. But it is precisely the interconnectedness of that sector that makes the pain so acute. The city's strength was in its depth, in its talent pool, its legal framework, and its unparalleled access to the European single market through the passporting system. When that access was abruptly severed, the whole system was forced to become less efficient, more expensive, and structurally weaker. And the irony is profound. Britain's high productivity before 2008 was partly built on the finance sector's incredible success, which some now rightly argue involved unsustainable excessive risk-taking. But even if the pre-crisis boom was unhealthy, the post-Brexit slump is simply inefficient and costly, a symptom of a self-imposed reduction in market access and trade intensity. The OBR's expected downgrade from 1.25% to 0.9% for annual trend productivity growth might sound like a tiny adjustment, but the cumulative effect is a black hole in the public finances, forcing a chancellor to confront a £40 billion shortfall against her ironclad fiscal rules. And this single devastating spreadsheet, and this spreadsheet tweak, so I better should say, lays bare the long-term non-reversible economic damage of the entire Brexit project. And it shows that the promise of economic freedom has delivered only economic constraint. It demonstrates that the vision of a financially liberated global Britain has simply meant a transfer of wealth and jobs and market power to Frankfurt and Paris. And my strong personal view is that this downgrade, this £21 billion hole, and the structural weakness in the City of London are all absolutely the necessary and direct consequences of a political decision that was fundamentally flawed from day one. And the British are now living in the messy, costly reality where ideology has overridden economic common sense, and the bill is finally coming due. And the productivity headache is not a puzzle. It's a logical, inevitable conclusion to the process of erecting tough trade barriers with your largest, closest economic partner. And the people of the UK will be paying that price in lower wage growth and underfunded public services for the foreseeable future. Thanks for watching, and if you want to see another video right now, the next one is right here in the end screen.